This is the Natasha Denona Bronze palette. I received this in my lucky bag this year. I don't know how to feel about this palette. I really, really like it. Every time I use it, I am happy with the eye look and I think it is really nice. At the same time, I have to sort of make myself use it. And I don't know what it is about this palette that pushes me away. I think it bothers me a little bit that Sundown, Ridge, and Beach are so similar colors. Suntan and Magma are pretty close. You know, even True Copper, True Bronze, and Alloy are almost the same color. I don't know. Every time I look at this palette, I'm not inspired. But every time I make myself use this palette, I really enjoy it. I'm gonna put this one in the maybe pile. And I'm gonna keep playing around with it for the next couple months. I move in about 3 months, 3.5 months. So that should give me enough time to really formulate a solid opinion on whether or not I'm keeping this, but I will either keep playing with it and enjoy it and take it with me, or I will declutter it and find it a new home. This is the Glamlight Glam Donut palette. That is what it looks like on the inside. It is the colorful bright one. I really enjoy this palette. My only sort of gripe that I have with this palette is the matte shades are actually a little bit lighter than the shimmer shades, which is not a huge deal, but for me personally, I like to do a matte crease and a matte outer corner and a lighter shimmer across the middle of the eye. And these are darker than the mattes inside, so that kind of throws me a little bit. I tend to have to reach for another palette to kind of complement this one. Or I just use glazed, which I think is meant to be a highlighter, but I use it on my eyes because it's really pretty. I really like this palette and I am going to keep it. I do think the packaging is cute, but the fact that it is like 3D like this kind of bothers me. And I know that's like a trivial thing to be annoyed by because it is cute and it fits the theme. It's just kind of big and bulky and hard to store. This is the Kaleidos and Angelica Nyqvist Club Nebula palette. This is, I would confidently say this is my favorite palette of 2021 so far. I think it is just amazing. I absolutely love everything about it. I can't stop using it. I can't stop raving about it. So I'm 100% keeping this. No contest. This is great. Here I have two little quads from the Colourpop and Animal Crossing collection. I have Nook Ink, which is the green one here, which I do really like and I am going to keep. I do wish CEO was not a glitter, but it is sort of a gel texture, so it's manageable, but I don't use it very often. So it's not my preference, but it's fine. I will keep it. And then here I have 5 Star Island. I don't know about this one. I like the idea of like a pink and yellow combo, and it does in theory look really nice, but I struggle with this palette a little bit more than I do with Nook Ink. I just don't think the pigmentation's as good. I think I'm gonna put this in the maybe pile because I may end up keeping this because it is so tiny and it doesn't take up that much space, but I just don't know if I need it. This is the Uoma Beauty Queen to Be palette from the Coming to America collection. I have done a review of this palette on my channel, so if you scroll backwards you can find it, and I will also try and remember to link it in the cards if you're interested. I really, really like this palette. I love how springy and fun it is. It reminds me a lot of the limited edition Le Jardin palette that Musée Beauty put out, which I was not able to get my hands on, but I did get this one, and they're not dupes. They're definitely not dupes, but they have a similar sort of vibe to them, and that's what I really like about this one. I am going to keep this one. I really like it. This is the Juvia's Place Sweet Pinks palette. Ooh, I still have the plastic in here, I guess. As you can see, this is barely used. I don't know if you can tell that, but there's like almost no use out of this palette. I have used it and I have swatched it, and every time I've used it, I've really liked it, but I'm not sure why I'm not reaching for it. I might put this in the maybe pile as well and play around with it a little bit more and see if over the next 3 months I either fall in love with it, or if I don't, I will pass this on to somebody else who really likes pinks. But the Juvia's Place quality is great, so it's not an issue of quality, it's just maybe the colors, I don't know. This is the Colourpop Big Poppy collection. I got this in a set with Little Ray of Sunshine. I've used this one a little bit more than Little Ray of Sunshine because I do really like those sort of rich oranges and browns. To me, this is a little bit more of a fall palette than the Little Ray of Sunshine, which is a little bit more of a spring, summer palette. So I'm not sure how much use I'm gonna get out of this in the summer, but that being said, I really, really like this palette. I think it's really, really good. I'm not even usually a big fan of all matte palettes, but I love these ones, so I am going to keep this. This is the Sigma On The Go palette in the Hazy color story. I did not get all of them, I just got Hazy. And I do really like this palette. It is definitely lighter than I thought it would be. And it's not, the color is not as intense as I thought it would be. And maybe that is true to sort of the rest of the Sigma palettes. I've never owned a Sigma palette before, so I cannot speak to that. But it is a really nice one for just like a classic, simple, everyday look. But it's probably not what I'd reach for if I was like going out or like a super special occasion. But I am gonna keep this, I do really like it. This one breaks my heart. This is the Tarte Love, Trust, and Fairy Dust palette. As you can see, it is filthy on the inside. I have used it a ton. It's hard to tell, but there are actually pretty big dips in a lot of these. I'm pretty sure this is expired now. None of the shades really work like they're supposed to. They don't feel right, they don't look right, they don't perform right anymore, which hurts. It hurts my heart because I absolutely adored this palette. I used it so much. This shade down here, this one here, this one here. I loved this palette, and like that packaging is just so cute with the sparkles and stuff, but I'm pretty sure that this is expired and I think it's time to let it go. Oh, that hurts my heart, but I think it's time. This is one of the newer palettes to my collection. This is the Huda Beauty Nude Light palette, which just looks like this. Normally I go for something a little bit more intense, something with a little bit more depth to it, but I do actually really like this palette. I like that it's very soft and subtle. I like that it's a great one for not quite no makeup days, but like when you're just going for something soft and quick and you don't want to, you know, have really big intense eyeshadow. I really like this. I am going to keep this. It's fairly new. This is my last remaining Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadow palette. This is the Mothership, what is it called? The Mothership Mini Rose Decadence. This one's also got plastic in it. So I've kept the plastic with this one because the shade names are printed on it, which bothers me deeply, but what are you gonna do? I like this palette, I do. I do not think it is worth the money I paid for it. I think it is quite expensive. It's like 80 Canadian dollars for 6 shades. But I do really like it. I don't, however, like that the two deepest shades are shimmers, because that doesn't really suit what I like to do with my eyeshadow. I might put this one in the maybe pile as well and play around with this, and probably I'll end up keeping this or the Juvia's Sweet Pinks. I don't know which one yet, but I probably won't keep both. This is the Natasha Denona Biba palette. This is one of the bigger sized palettes. I think they retail for $129 in the States, and they're $170 here in Canada. I really like this. I can't explain to you what it is about this palette that I like, because it's boring, it's basic, there's not a lot going on, but I can't stop using it. I love it, and I'm gonna keep it. This is one of the newer palettes in my collection. This is Menagerie's Flight Club. I'm trying to get more into buying indie makeup, and so this was one of my first sort of big indie purchases. I love this palette. This is everything I wanted the Jeffree Star Bloodlust to be. It is bold, it's impactful, it's got really beautiful shimmer textures. They're like almost flaky, so they've got like this really awesome dimension on the eye. I love that it can go very light with these nudes in here all the way through to like Flying Fox and Flighty. I love that it's bat themed, because like that is adorable. Tell me you don't love that. That is adorable. So I'm definitely keeping this. I think this is great. All right, 3 more piles to go. This is the Natasha Denona Peak palette. I got this in a BoxyCharm, and it is just one of the like 5 pans. I remember saying in my Natasha Denona ranking video, which I'll link above, that this was my favorite Natasha Denona 5 pan. I don't use it. I don't reach for it. I don't want to reach for it. It doesn't inspire me. I am going to declutter this. That's a weird thing for me to do because I do like it. I think it's gorgeous, but I'm not using it, so it needs to go to a home of somebody who is going to love it as it should be loved. This is my Melt 420 palette. I remember Angelica Nikvist talking about how this was the worst palette, I think it was of 2020, or one of the worst palettes from 2020. I love it. The only shade that does not work for me at all is Shatter, which is this shimmer, which I've heard shimmers are sometimes an issue with Melt palettes. I don't really mind that much because the rest of the palette is matte. That is the only shimmer in here, and I can make it work. It's just a lot of hassle. But I actually usually just use this as an all matte palette, or I pair it with some of my other shadows. I have a mini of the Fenty highlighter in Hustla Baby, which is a little bit softer than this, but a similar tone, so I will actually use that in place of this if I want to pair it with this palette. I really like it, and I am definitely going to keep it. This is the Dominique Cosmetics Berries and Cream palette. I also received this in a lucky bag, I think in 2019 or 2020, I don't remember. This is another palette that I don't understand why I don't use it. I like every shade in here. I specifically love Sugar Cookie, this blue and Bittersweet up here. Those are gorgeous. Everything about this palette I should like, and I never use it. I'm gonna put this in my maybe pile. I know I keep saying that I really should stop with the maybe pile, but I'm gonna put this in my maybe pile, and I'm going to try and insist that I use it a few more times before I move, and if I'm not totally in love with it by the time I move, I probably will declutter it, but for now, maybe pile. This is the Colourpop and Star Wars Mandalorian palette. It is called The Child. I'm sure you have seen this before, probably 10,000 times on my channel. I'm not sure how many times I can mention this palette or how it made me fall in love with greens before you guys just get bored of me, but I adore this palette. I think it is absolutely great. I love everything about it. I like that it can go a little more brown. I like that it can go a little more green. I like that this shade up here is a Super Shock. I love this palette. I'm keeping it. I would buy a second one if I lost this palette. I would buy a second one tomorrow. I love this palette. Another awesome Colourpop one. This is the Colourpop and Raw Beauty Christie At Forest Sight palette. I adore this one. This palette, the color story of it especially, reminds me a lot of a few other palettes I have in my collection. I have reached for this sort of color story in, you know, Subculture from Anastasia Beverly Hills is similar. Some of the mattes in here are a little more intense, but they're similar to Natasha Denona Safari, and they're also similar to Aether Beauty Joshua Tree. I don't know why I keep buying the identical palette, but here we are. I really like this. I think this is fantastic. I really like that it is mostly mattes. I really like the intensity. I just like everything about it, so I am going to keep this. This is the Huda Beauty Mercury Retrograde palette. I have wanted this for quite a while, and I ended up picking it up last year or earlier this year. When did I buy this palette? That's embarrassing. I don't remember when I bought this palette. Anyway, I really, really like this palette. I think the colors are just gorgeous. I love how springy and fun it is. I like that there's some bright blues and some purples, but there's also some nudes. It's really easy to get a bunch of different looks out of this. I'm keeping this. This is the Lunar Beauty Moonspell palette. I think this is the one they are discontinuing. So if it's still available where you like to shop for makeup and you've wanted it, jump on it, because I think this one is disappearing. I really like this. This is fairly new to my collection because it took me like a year to talk myself into buying it. I'm still always a little bit nervous of trying like influencer brands, just because a lot of the influencer brands that I have tried have been really poor quality, and you end up paying a lot of money to get somebody's name on something. I do not feel that is the case with Lunar Beauty. At the very least, this palette is absolutely amazing quality. I can't speak to what the rest of them are like, but I assume they wouldn't have just like one good palette. That seems weird. I really like this. I really like how it's got the pinks and the greens and the nudes. I just think this is a great palette, so I am going to keep it. Here we have the Glamlight Street Taco palette. It just looks like that. I opened it upside down. This is the smaller of the two. They have a larger taco palette as well. I really like this. I think this is really fun. I don't totally know how to use it. A lot of the colors are really bright, and I find I tend to get a little nervous when I try and use them, which is weird because I wear a lot of bright colors, so I'm not sure why this palette scares me more than some other bright colored palettes, but I do really like it. I am getting quite a bit of use out of it. And even though it's got this like weird shape, it is flat, so it's fairly easy to store, so I don't mind that. I am gonna keep this. Here I've got my Natasha Denona Love palette. This is, I think, the 2019 Valentine's Day one, the 2020 Valentine's Day one. I don't remember what year this came out. Time is a relative concept, and I'm having trouble with it lately. I think we all are. Sorry, I love this palette. I think this is great. This is probably my favorite Natasha Denona palette I own right now. I can get a lot of really nice looks out of it. I'm really enjoying it, so I am going to keep this. This is my e.l.f. and J. Kissa To The Rescue palette. This is the sort of rainbowy one. I have no idea how to feel about this palette, if I'm honest. When I first got this, it was incredibly pigmented, it was so intense, it was so beautiful, and I was so impressed with e.l.f. And I was so impressed with the e.l.f. quality. I've only had this for a couple months, and it already doesn't perform well anymore. And I don't know if I'm just misremembering how good it was, or if it actually just stopped working. I can't explain it. I went to go do my Rainbow Pride look with this palette, and the only two colors that showed up that looked like anything were this green and this blue. The other four colors, the red, orange, yellow, and purple, did not look like anything. I could not get any pigment to show up. It was awful. So I am going to declutter this because it does not work, but I don't understand what happened to it. I want to know. This is the Colourpop It's My Pleasure palette. As you can see, it is very broken. I have broken a lot of the shades in here. The middle shade was broken as soon as I got it. This shade is broken and been repressed. This shade is broken and been repressed. And that shade is broken and has been repressed. And I don't love them. That being said, Kittenfish and Fanfiction are some of my favorite purpley pinks that I own in my collection. So I am going to declutter this palette, but I am going to pop these out. These are magnetic palettes, so they come out really easily, and I'm just going to put them in another Colourpop palette or with my singles. This is my Anastasia Beverly Hills Subculture palette. I know this is a very divisive palette. Lots of people did not love it. I do. This is actually the palette I chose to wear today. You can't see my face, but I am wearing it. And every time I use it, I love it. And I constantly tell myself I need to get rid of it because I have so many other palettes with this exact color story, but I just love this palette and I can't stop reaching for it. So as much as I think I should get rid of it, I don't think I'm going to. That's probably not what you want to see out of a declutter, is me talking myself out of decluttering, but I am going to keep this one. This is another palette which has a similar feel but not an identical color story. This is Aether Beauty Joshua Tree. It is an all matte palette with that similar sort of green, nude, pinky, yellowy kind of tone. It does also have this purple and this blue in here, which is kind of unique. I don't mind this palette. There's nothing wrong with it. The colors are great, the pigmentation is fine, the color story is definitely something I really enjoy, but I never reach for this. Personally, I think it's the weird pans, and I know that's a ridiculous thing to say, but I like square pans, so I like these ones. These ones freak me out and I don't like them. That's a really petty reason to get rid of an eyeshadow palette, but I'm going with it. I'm gonna see if some of my friends might want this palette instead. I have a lot of friends who are into sort of soft, subtle matte palettes, and I think this would be up somebody else's alley, but I am gonna get rid of this one. This is the Sephora Animal Eyes palette. I got this as a Christmas present from one of my friends this year. Thank you, Jill, if you are watching. It is just a really nice sort of nude palette. I was actually really impressed with the quality of this one. I was not expecting to be blown away by these shimmers, but they are actually really beautiful. I don't reach for the mattes as much. They're fine, there's absolutely nothing wrong with them, but I tend to actually use this as sort of a like companion palette to an all matte palette. So I am going to keep this one and just keep using it for the shimmers. It's also really small, like it's quite compact, so it doesn't take up that much room. This is my Anastasia Beverly Hills Norvina palette. It is probably one of my most used palettes, right behind Soft Glam. It is very dirty. Wild Child and Celestial have huge big dips in them. So does Love, so does Soul. I like this palette a lot. I am definitely gonna keep this palette. And this is our final pile for the day. We are just about through. If you are still with me, thank you, appreciate it. This is the Natasha Denona Mini Nude palette. I am gonna declutter this one. I'm a little surprised at myself that I am going to declutter this one because I do really like it, but I'm just not using it. I need a shade, a matte shade in between those two, and I could have done without this shimmer. So it's just not my perfect 5 pan, so I am going to declutter that. This is the Colourpop Make It Fearless palette. This came out with the Make It Black collection. I am really liking this palette. I've only used it a couple of times, but I really like how bold and fun it is. I was really impressed that Colourpop was actually trying to make something a little bit brighter, bolder, more colorful, because that is typically not something they are super known for, so I really enjoy this palette. I am going to keep this. Here is my Dose of Colors Sassy Siennas palette. I received this in a BoxyCharm as well. This is pretty old now, and I'm not reaching for it as much as I would like to, so I think I am going to declutter this one. This is the Too Faced Shake Your Pom Poms palette. It is one of the little mini guys. This is my only remaining Too Faced palette. Ooh, sorry. This is my only remaining Too Faced palette. I have since decluttered every Too Faced palette I have ever tried, usually because they expired, but a couple because they were terrible. This one is not terrible, actually. I traveled with this one as well. I also brought this to Europe in 2019 when I was traveling, and I do really enjoy it, but I'm not reaching for it, and I think because it still has some life left in it and it's not expired yet, I should pass it on to somebody who is going to use it before it expires so it doesn't go to waste. So I am going to declutter this one. This is the Colourpop Pretty Guardian palette. It is the collaboration with Sailor Moon. I think I said earlier that the Odin's Eye one was my only really pastel palette. This palette is pretty pastel. The pinks and purples and yellows at the bottom are very, very light. They are subtle, they are soft, but I really enjoy this palette. This color here, I think this is Silver Millennium, is also a super shock and it works really well. I am gonna keep this. I didn't know if I was going to until I picked it up, but I'm looking at it and I'm like, yeah, no, I need this. I'm gonna keep this. This is mine. This is the Zulu palette by Juvia's Place. This is one of the sort of rainbowy colorful ones. This was one of the first palettes I had that really got me into color. I wasn't sure if I was going to love sort of bright colorful rainbow palettes, but I purchased this one and I really do. I've heard a lot of people say they like the mattes but not the shimmers. I disagree. I love the shimmers as well. I think this is a great, great palette. I am gonna keep this. This is the BH Cosmetics Avocado Toast palette. I love this palette. It's really hard to show on camera. It is so reflective. I love this palette. I think this palette is absolutely great. I love the greens. I love the pinks. I love how you can take it pretty deep. I like that you can keep it really light. I absolutely think this is great. And you know, for the price for BH Cosmetics, this quality is out of this world. So I love this palette. I'm gonna keep it. This is my Beauty Bakery Proof is in the Puddin' palette. I think I got this in a FabFitFun box. It is really nice. Like, the quality is good, but it is so light, and it is not the kind of nudes that I want to go for. I think this would be a great palette for somebody who wasn't sure if they wanted to wear a lot of makeup, or who wanted something a little bit less intense, or even somebody who is just starting out and didn't want something super dark to make it easier to learn how to blend eyeshadows. I think this would work really well for that. So I am going to declutter this one, but it's not a bad quality. It's just not my perfect palette. This is the Menagerie Arthrine Blush palette. It says volume 1 down here, but they only have one, so maybe that's a hint that something else is coming. Yes, I know this is a face palette, but I actually use this on my eyes as well, so I keep it with my eyeshadows, but it is kind of both because I do use it on my face. I think this is awesome. Really, this As a blush palette, pushes me way out of my comfort zone because I would have never thought I could wear any of those or this one or that one as blush, but I totally can and I love it. But it also works really well on the eyes for like a nice poppy pink or red look. I just really enjoy it, so I am going to keep this. Plus look at that little bear. Look at it. It's wearing a flower crown. That's adorable. This is the Colourpop Limoncello palette. This is, I think, my newest Colourpop palette. It just looks like that. I really enjoy this palette. And again, it's one of those palettes that I don't totally understand why I love, because it is fairly boring, fairly basic. I mean, it's got like a sort of poppy blue and this yellow's kind of bright here, but otherwise it's a neutral palette. But I really, really like it. So I am going to keep this. I really enjoy it, but I don't totally understand why I love it so much. I just really do. And the last palette that I physically have in my collection is the Natasha Denona Safari palette. This is another one that is not a dupe for ABH Subculture, but it's got a similar vibe to it in terms of like some of the yellows and some of the greens and the grays and this dark blue up here. I really enjoy this palette. I think it is really nice. I like most of the colors in here work really well. Rhino for some reason just does not show up on me and it makes me sad. I think I got a dud, but the rest of them work really well and they look really nice, so I am going to keep it. So these are the palettes that are being decluttered. There are 15 of them here. This is my maybe pile. There are 8 palettes in this one. All right, and these here are the palettes I am keeping. There are 48 of them. I know that is a pretty big collection still. Please don't feel like you need to compare your collection to mine, especially if it is going to make me or you feel bad. We don't need to do that to each other. How we spend our money and what we choose to purchase is entirely personal and totally up to us, but 48 is pretty good. I was actually not expecting to get that low, so I'm quite happy with that. I hope you enjoyed this palette declutter and collection video, or videos. There was probably 2 of them now that I'm looking at the time here. But I hope you enjoyed this. I really, really would love for you to subscribe and come back in one of my future videos. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will see you in my next one. Bye!